The massive Kodiak bear approached Ranger Anya, who was tied securely to a towering pine tree in the dense Alaskan wilderness. Anya had been bound and abandoned by poachers, her body aching and hope nearly lost. The rough hemp rope bit deep into her arms and chest, anchoring her immovably against the rough bark. The huge bear stopped just feet away. Its dark eyes locked on her. The air thrummed with a dangerous silence. Anya tried to control the frantic beat of her heart, searched the bear's intimidating frame for any sign of recognition. That's when she saw it. The faint, jagged scar across its muzzle, a wound she had cleaned and sutured many months before in her remote outpost. It had been a smaller female bear, not this giant, who had brought her injured cub to Anya for aid. A powerful story of trust you can watch in a previous video on our channel. But this was clearly her mate, the magnificent boar who had guarded them from a distance. The terrifying predator was now her only hope. The bear shifted its weight, its gaze moving from Anya's face to the restricting knots around her torso. It lowered its immense head, its coarse fur brushing the damp moss. A low rumble vibrated in its chest. A sound Anya knew wasn't aggression, but something like acknowledgement. The bear cautiously extended its snout and nudged the rope, then retracted its head, almost as if assessing the complexity of the knots. Anya tried to speak, a raw, dehydrated croak leaving her throat. "It's me, big guy. You remember?" The bear flicked its ear, a small sign that it was listening. It then began to work with a precision that belied its size. The bear used its canines to pull at the thicker strands of the hemp rope, careful to avoid Anya's skin. Progress was painstakingly slow. The knots were tight and stiff with the cold. Anya felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with profound anxiety. If the bear accidentally bit her, the relief would be instantly replaced by a catastrophic wound. But the animal worked with almost surgical focus, its prior experience with the human's healing hand seemingly translating into a deep, unwavering trust in its mission. Suddenly, a cacophony of guttural snarls cut through the quiet forest. From behind a thicket of salmonberry bushes, a menacing pack of wolves appeared. Their lean, powerful bodies moved with predatory intent, drawn by the scent of a stationary human and a preoccupied bear. The bear immediately stopped its rescue efforts. It raised its head, turning its focus from the knots to the approaching danger. The lead wolf, a grizzled alpha, trotted forward aggressively. The bear was forced to make a desperate choice: continue trying to save Anya or defend both of them from the growing threat. The wolves were closing the distance fast. Would this act of rescue be abandoned before Anya could even whisper a thank you? The standoff between the solitary bear and the aggressive wolf pack escalated quickly. The bear positioned itself directly between Anya and the advancing wolves. It unleashed a deafening roar that echoed through the pines. This was not the frustrated groan of a rescuer, but the clear, intimidating challenge of a protector. The wolf pack hesitated, momentarily intimidated by the sheer power and size of the bear. But their hunger and the perceived weakness of the tied human quickly overcame their fear. They fanned out, their tactic clear, overwhelmed the bear with numbers. The fight was a blur of snapping jaws and ferocity. The bear, motivated by an unknown sense of duty, lunged. It swatted one of the attacking wolves mid-leap, sending it tumbling. It used its massive bulk to keep the others at bay, its roar a continuous promise of violence. Anya watched, her heart pounding in her ears. Every strike the bear delivered was a life-saving action directed ultimately toward her safety. She felt a strange, profound guilt, watching her savior fight for its life while she was totally helpless. The bear managed to drive the wolf pack back toward the river, but not without receiving a nasty superficial gash on its shoulder. With the wolves temporarily repelled, the bear slowly returned to Anya. It was exhausted, its heavy breath fogging the chilly air. It nudged Anya's shoulder gently, then turned its head and looked intensely at the ropes. It let out a soft, intentional groan, a sound that shifted in pitch as it looked back at Anya and then down at the knots again, as if trying to will her to understand what to do next. It was a plea for a solution. With the wolves temporarily driven off, a momentary fragile peace settled on the forest. But the key to Anya's freedom was still tightly bound. Anya, energized by the imminent danger, focused on the ropes. The bear had successfully chewed through the outer layers, but the core was too thick and tight. Anya desperately began scraping the back of her hand, where the rope was slightly looser, against the rough bark of the pine tree. She did this repeatedly to try to fray the hemp fibers. The bark scraped her skin raw, but she ignored the pain. When she looked up, the bear was watching her with intense focus. Anya strained her neck to nod toward the specific area of rope she'd frayed. The intelligent eyes of the bear seemed to register the instruction. The bear lowered its head once more. It took a deep breath and, with a quick powerful movement, bit down hard on the weakened section. Snap! The rope gave way. Anya tumbled to the side, her body hitting the soft moss with a painful thud. She was free, but weak and disoriented. She immediately scrambled backwards, a reflex she couldn't control. But the danger wasn't over. Just as Anya was struggling to get to her knees, a different sound reached them. The cracking of branches and the low grunts of a larger bear, drawn by the scent of blood and conflict. From behind a ridge, a new, younger male bear emerged. It hadn't witnessed the rescue. It only saw a scrambling, vulnerable human on the ground. For it, Anya was now just prey. Anya's protector turned immediately toward the new arrival. He let out a fierce warning roar, not of attack, but of assertion, signaling that this human was his concern, confusing the younger bear and momentarily halting its advance. The immediate panic faded as Anya finally found her footing. Realizing the most powerful form of gratitude was yet to come from her unlikely protector, Anya used the adrenaline surging through her veins to crawl behind the large pine tree. Her bear held its ground, a silent sentinel, until the new bear, sensing no easy conflict, slowly turned and disappeared back into the woods. When the bear finally turned back to Anya, the danger was truly past. She sat against the tree, her body aching, but her spirit soaring. She looked at the bear, who was now standing quietly, its massive chest rising and falling rhythmically. There was no aggression, only a quiet, steady gaze. Anya slowly extended her battered hand, and the bear, with an intelligence that defied definition, lowered its head one last time, allowing Anya to gently scratch the base of its scarred ear. It was a moment of profound wordless connection, a final emotional acknowledgement of a debt paid. The bear gave a final soft huff, then turned with quiet dignity and ambled away into the deep forest, leaving Anya safe and utterly speechless. This encounter wasn't just a lucky coincidence. It was a powerful, undeniable lesson that kindness offered without expectation is never truly forgotten. The bear remembered the human who had saved its family and in turn risked everything to save her. Anya would go on to report the poachers, who were later brought to justice. But the true reward was the validation of her life's work, the innate capacity for trust and connection in the animal kingdom. If this story taught you that even the most ferocious creatures can possess loyalty, share this video with someone who needs a dose of hope today. The bond between Anya and the bear continues to deepen. And next week, join me as we dive into an incredible story on my channel, a moment that will challenge everything you think you know about the wild. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter in this wild saga of empathy and survival. The silence that settled after the bear's departure was profound. It was not merely an absence of sound, but a presence, a thick, living quiet that seemed to absorb the last echoes of the confrontation. Anya remained against the pine tree, her body trembling not from fear, but from the sheer, overwhelming release of tension. Every ache and raw scrape on her wrists was a testament to her ordeal, but also to her impossible rescue. She knew she couldn't stay. The scent of blood from the bear's wounded shoulder was a potent lure, and the wolf pack, though driven off, was likely still lurking at the edge of the territory. With a grunt of effort, she pushed herself to her feet, her legs feeling like water. Her first few steps were a shaky stumble, but with each one, a sliver of her ranger's instincts returned. Her priority was her outpost. It was a 2-hour hike under normal circumstances, but in her condition, and with night falling, it would be a perilous journey. Yet, the thought of the warm stove, the radio, and the medical supplies was a powerful magnet pulling her forward. As she moved, the forest seemed different. The shadows between the trees no longer felt purely menacing. They felt watchful. Several times, she caught a flicker of movement in her periphery, a dark, massive shape keeping pace with her about 100 yards to the east. Her protector was ensuring she made it home. The journey was a blur of pain and exhaustion. When the warm, yellow light of her cabin window finally pierced the twilight, a sob of relief caught in her throat. She staggered inside, bolting the door behind her. Her first action was to grab the satellite radio. "Base, this is Anya at Outpost 7. I'm safe. I was ambushed by poachers, the Johnson crew by the look of the traps they dropped. I'm reporting their location." Her voice was hoarse but steady. "But listen, there's more. A male Kodiak, the one I've tagged as Guardian, he intervened. He's wounded. A gash on his left shoulder. I need to track him." The dispatcher on the other end was silent for a moment. "Anya, are you sure you're lucid? You're saying a bear rescued you?" "It's a long story," she said, her eyes already scanning her medical kit. "Just get a team to those coordinates. And clear me for a field medical pursuit on Guardian. His wound needs cleaning, or it'll fester." The following days were a whirlwind. The poachers were apprehended at their camp, thanks to her precise directions. But for Anya, the true mission was just beginning. She found Guardian's trail easily. A massive creature leaves a significant mark, especially when favoring a leg. She followed the signs: disturbed moss, a single drop of dried blood on a fern, the occasional deep print. She found him on the third day, in a secluded valley dense with alder. He was lying by a stream, licking his wounded shoulder. He saw her the moment she stepped into the clearing. He raised his head, his dark eyes fixed on her. There was no aggression, only a weary recognition. Anya moved slowly, speaking in low, soothing tones. "Just returning the favor, big guy. Let me see." She had brought her long-range tranquilizer rifle, but she left it slung over her shoulder. Trust had to be a two-way street. Instead, she approached, her medical kit held openly in her hands. He watched her, his breath rumbling, but he didn't move away. As she got closer, she could see the gash was inflamed, a clear sign of infection setting in. Working with a calm she didn't fully feel, she cleaned the wound, applied a powerful antibiotic salve, and sprayed it with a bitter-tasting sealant to keep the insects away. Throughout the entire process, the colossal bear remained still, his head lowered, his eyes occasionally closing as if in relief. It was a reenactment of that first encounter with his mate and cub, the circle of trust now complete. When she was done, she packed her kit and took a few steps back. Guardian lifted his head, sniffed the air where she had been, and then gave her a long, deep look. It was a look that held an ancient understanding. Then, he turned and ambled away, disappearing into the thick Alaskan greenery, stronger and safer. Back at the outpost, Anya uploaded her footage: the initial rescue, the standoff with the wolves, the final treatment. The story exploded, not as a sensational tale of man versus beast, but as a profound lesson in cross-species empathy. But the story doesn't end there. Guardian's act of loyalty had a ripple effect. The female and her cub, now healthy and strong, were seen more frequently near the outpost, no longer fleeing at the sight of Anya. A new dynamic had been established, a fragile, unspoken truce between the ranger and the local bear dynasty. And next week, we dive deeper into that very dynasty. We'll follow the cub, now a vibrant young bear, as it faces a new threat, not from poachers or wolves, but from a changing climate that is pushing rival bear populations into its territory. We'll witness how the lessons of trust and alliance, learned from its parents' encounter with a human, may be the key to its survival. This is a saga that continues to unfold, proving that one act of courage can reshape an entire ecosystem. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter in this wild story of empathy and survival. The Alaskan summer sun, weak but persistent, filtered through the dense canopy of spruce, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of light and shadow. Anya moved with a quiet purpose she hadn't possessed before her encounter with Guardian. Her steps were sure, her senses heightened, tuned to the subtle language of the wilderness. The success of Guardian's treatment and the subsequent truce with the bear family had cemented a new reality for her. She was no longer just an observer in this ecosystem, she was, in some small, incredible way, a participant. Her current mission was to monitor the family. The female, whom Anya had dubbed Saga, and her yearling cub, Cody, were thriving. From a safe and concealed distance, Anya watched them. Cody was a bundle of playful energy, swatting at butterflies and tumbling over logs while his mother dug for roots, her powerful shoulders rippling with muscle. The scene was one of idyllic wildness. But Anya's ranger instincts, sharpened by years in the field, sensed a shift. The salmon run in their usual creek had been sparse this year, a consequence of warmer waters upstream. The easy bounty was gone, and hunger was a quiet, growing pressure in the forest. It was this pressure that brought the new threat. Anya first noticed the signs near the northern ridge, fresh, deep claw marks on trees that were not guardians, and a distinct, musky scent she didn't recognize. A lone, nomadic male grizzly, larger and more desperate than the local bears, had been pushed into the territory by the same resource scarcity. He was a scarred veteran of countless conflicts, his hide cross-hatched with the white lines of old battles. Anya logged him in her notes as the Challenger. The confrontation happened near the same stream where she had treated Guardian. The Challenger appeared like a phantom, his size dwarfing even Saga. He wasn't posturing or warning, he was hunting, seeing Cody not as a rival, but as prey. A low, guttural growl erupted from him as he charged. Saga reacted with the ferocity of a mother possessed. She placed herself between the intruder and her cub, rising on her hind legs to her full, impressive height, roaring a challenge that shook the very air. But the Challenger was heavier, his rage more singular and destructive. He swiped a massive paw, catching Saga on the shoulder, a brutal blow that sent her stumbling. From her vantage point, Anya's heart seized. This was the natural order, a brutal contest for territory and survival. To intervene was against every protocol, a dangerous anthropomorphism that could get her killed. But as she watched Cody's terrified cries and saw Saga falter under the onslaught, the memory of the rope snapping, of Guardian's quiet gaze, flashed in her mind. This was not just nature, this was her family. Just as the Challenger prepared to lunge for a final, decisive attack, a new roar split the air. It was a sound of pure, territorial fury, a sound Anya knew intimately. Guardian had arrived. He emerged from the tree line like a force of nature, his healed shoulder driving him forward with unstoppable power. He didn't hesitate. He slammed into the Challenger, a collision of titans that sent a shockwave through the clearing. This was not a fight over food, it was a defense of kin and covenant. Guardian fought with a strategic ferocity Anya had never witnessed. He used his bulk to shield Saga and Cody, taking blows meant for them, his own roars echoing his opponent's. Anya, acting on an impulse born of that profound connection, did the unthinkable. She broke from her cover, not to fight, but to create a diversion. She shouted, waved her arms, and fired a warning shot from her pistol into the air. The sharp, unnatural crack of the gunshot startled the Challenger, breaking his focus for a critical second. It was all Guardian needed. In that moment of distraction, he landed a crushing blow to the intruder's jaw. The Challenger, stunned and outmatched, let out a pained bellow and retreated, crashing back into the forest from whence he came. Silence returned, heavy and panting. Guardian stood his ground, his sides heaving, new scratches lacing his dark fur. Saga slowly got to her feet, nudging a trembling Cody behind her. Then, she turned her head and looked at Guardian. It was a look of acknowledgement, of an alliance forged in fire. And then, Saga's gaze shifted past her mate, and settled on Anya. The human, the bear, and the cub stood in a silent triangle. No ropes bound them, no immediate danger threatened. They were held together by something far stronger, a shared history of rescue, a mutual debt paid, and a future forever intertwined. Guardian gave a soft, low chuff, not of warning, but of reassurance. In that moment, Anya understood. The bond wasn't just between her and one bear. It had expanded, creating a new, unprecedented understanding between their species. This was the next chapter. Not just survival, but coexistence. The story was no longer about a single rescue, but about the foundation of a pact that would redefine the boundaries of this wild place. And as the three bears, the protector, the mother, and the cub, turned and melted back into the forest together, Anya knew her work had only just begun. The world needed to see this. It was a story of more than hope, it was a blueprint for a new way to be.